Hello, Black Eagles. Welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast YouTube channel or Patreon, depending on where you're watching this. And if you're watching this through early access or if you had to wait the entire time to watch it on YouTube for free, of course, go and check out the Black Eagles podcast on Patreon or hit the join button on YouTube if you are watching this later on down the road. I'm not quite sure yet when we're going to air this episode. Probably during the next international break, but of course, for those of you who are Black Eagle VIP subscribers, you will be able to watch this early as soon as it's finished uploading, essentially. But this is another episode of the Black Eagles stories. I think this is number 3. The series stopped a little bit for a while due to time constraints in our project, but it's something I wanted to pick up again. And today we are joined by nobody less than our own Eagle from Colorado, and that is Nathan Davis. And Nathan, your camera just resized. I don't know what's up with that, but
that's fun.
That usually has to do with bandwidth, but I'll get that fixed. Oh, there we go. It fixed itself. Perfection. So Nathan, you have a very interesting story, and you told me and the group, I think, on WhatsApp. For those of you who are not in there, go and check that out. During our live shows, we have the QR code up, or hit us up on Patreon and find the QR code there. But in our WhatsApp community chat, Nathan, I'm sure you've told the story already of how you became a Beşiktaş fan. But you've been in there for quite a while now. I think the community's been going for close to a year, I'd say, and I dare say you're one of the first couple of people who were in there. So for those of us watching right now who didn't catch your story or maybe joined later on, how about you tell us a little bit, but not too much yet, but how did you first get to know the club? How did you get into contact with the club, and how did you become a fan? But don't tell us too much yet, because there's a couple of things I want to pick up on there.
All right. Well, I hope I don't go into too much detail here, but so I think for a while, I had kind of been looking for a club to follow. Of course, we have MLS clubs here in the U.S., but I mean, frankly, no one really cares about them, at least in my circles. So, it was not something that I wanted to kind of latch onto my local club, which would be the Colorado Rapids here. So I would watch the World Cup and, here and there plug into football, but I also realized that kind of the whole world cares about this sport in a way that the United States kind of doesn't. So I'd been on the lookout for a club, but couldn't really find a connection that felt real or made sense. And then I guess it was last summer, was traveling actually via Istanbul to a wedding that I was attending in Uganda, and spent probably 5 days or so in Istanbul on the front end, and then was going actually in a cab to breakfast one morning, and happened to drive right by the Tüpraş Stadium, and was kind of speculating. The cab driver, I don't think, spoke much English, if any, but was communicating with us via Google Translate and this sort of thing. I was with some friends and was kind of, I wonder which club it is plays in that beautiful stadium there. And the cab driver definitely understood that question, because he got really excited to tell us that was where Beşiktaş plays. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Went and had breakfast. Made a mental note, like, I should figure out what that's all about. And, in the course of researching the club and learning about the history and Çarşı, and I won't get too much into, politics and that sort of thing, but I think certainly like the sort of left-wing associations of Çarşı resonated with me. So, kind of decided, hey, I think this might be the one. And started watching all the matches and trying to follow it as well as I could, from afar and in a language that I don't speak, and then ultimately, stumbled upon the Black Eagles podcast and WhatsApp group, and it's really helped, I think, deepen my connection to the club.
And it's quite curious though, Nathan, because unlike most people who follow Beşiktaş from afar, whether you're in the United States, Australia, Canada, somewhere in Europe, Asia, whatever, but most people have like a blood relationship or something like that. They have a father or an uncle, or even sometimes in situations where they don't have Turkish roots, but they have like a friend, a Turkish friend who's like a really big Beşiktaş fan. But for you, that's not really the case, is it? I mean, I know you've made friends nowadays who are Beşiktaş fans as well. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't think you really have. Prior to this, I don't think you really had any friends or relatives that support the club, right?
No really pre-existing connection whatsoever. Which is, it's also interesting. Like I'm a big baseball fan. I think I've shared that in the WhatsApp group. But even the baseball team that I follow is not the team my dad follows, for example. I've tended to latch on to sort of random teams.
Yeah, because what's the baseball team you support? It's from another part in the country, right?
Yeah, Detroit Tigers.
Okay.
So
how far is that from Colorado? I'm not too familiar with the geography there.
Yeah, it's 2 time zones away.
Okay.
So it's probably about if you were to get on an airplane, it'd be about a 2.5 hour flight, probably from where I am. So it's not close. But I have sort of a history of following teams, that aren't in my neck of the woods. So
yeah,
nothing new.
And then another curious thing, really, about your fandom is that most people who find a club like you're saying, you wanted to find a club to support. But one of the things that we do notice is that usually success tends to attract people. And you mentioned just now you were in Istanbul. What was it, last summer? Or
yeah, last summer.
So
yep.
I mean, you've been in our WhatsApp community for I want to say since it's got erected, essentially.
Yeah,
so for like a year,
November,
so
maybe. Yeah.
Let's say you've been a Beşiktaş fan for 18 months, maybe. Right?
Yeah, probably not even.
Yeah. And it's not to say that Beşiktaş have been extremely successful in that time period or anything along those lines. So it's really what really attracted you into the club. Obviously, you mentioned the political aspect of the fans, but and feel free to go into politics. I feel like that is something that's intertwined with the club to an extent. So I mean, what attracted you to the club? Obviously, the stadium, the political background a little bit, but yeah, how did you come to pick a team, a club that really in recent years has been going through a down period for sure?
Well, that almost makes it better as a time to become a fan of a club for me. I think it would feel kind of unearned if I latched on to a team that was like, oh, they've won 5 titles in the last 7 years, just something like that. So I thought, I think it may be intertwined with my politics. Like I like an underdog, and so not to say that Beşiktaş is an underdog, in the scheme of the Super League, but I
relatively,
think a team that isn't
right. And
yeah,
but what you're saying
right.
as well, I think, says a lot about you yourself as a person, because I think most people wouldn't think like that. They would think like, hey, I want to be able to cheer as much as possible, and I mean that's just the way in sports it tends to go. Like the top dogs tend to get the most following because a large portion of the population likes to just identify with success, and that's all they really care about. But for you, clearly, it's more than just that.
Yeah, it would have been easy enough to look up, who's exciting in the English Premier League right now and decide that's my team. But that would have felt phony. So I think like finding a club that stands for something more, and I know historically, I think Beşiktaş has been really proud of the kind of the values and the ethos of the club, as much as the results on the pitch necessarily. And so I've never, to be clear, like the Tigers haven't won a World Series in my lifetime either. So um, I've never celebrated a championship for a team that I follow. So
Oh dear.
hopefully soon.
Hopefully, hopefully, and hopefully they'll be in the black and white colors. I'm not sure
That's right.
what other the other clubs that you support, what colors they have, but yeah, hopefully it'll be for Beşiktaş, but probably won't be this season, Nathan. Unfortunately, after yesterday's game. So
No,
how do you
no.
look at things as a relatively new fan, and you've really not had lived through the success? So is it difficult for you to really latch on to a player or something along those lines? I'm not sure. Do you have somebody that you would really say that that's my favorite player or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I love Rafa when he's on, of course. A lot of fun to watch, and there are those times that he's clearly the most talented player on the pitch, which is always fun to watch somebody take over like that. I was a big fan of Jedson last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
Of course, he moved on. And earlier, but I really obviously enjoyed watching Orkun get his feet under him at the club. So, I love those kinds of guys who are unselfish team players, hard workers. I think we all do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say those are probably the three guys in my short time that have stuck out. But becoming more and more a fan of Imran Topçu. Lots of guys here and there.
So did you go back and watch like videos from before, like maybe from Ricardo Quaresma or from our current coach Sergen or Mario Gomez, players like that, Atiba? This is stuff like that you go and look up on YouTube and you'll watch those, or?
I have. I definitely watched like a big Sergen supercut, highlight reel when he was kind of coming back into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing that I've done, I don't know, like systematically or very intentionally, but I've definitely seen highlights. If people are talking in the group chat about a player that I wasn't around to see, I might go look up just some highlights and things like that. But I have not gone back and watched like full matches from championship seasons or anything like that. I wish I had that kind of time, but I don't.
And during the time that you spent in Istanbul, then did you have a chance to go to a game already, or is that something that's still on your bucket list?
No, it's on my bucket list for sure. So it was, what was it? It was like late July when I was there. So we weren't playing at the time. I think actually the wedding in Uganda was the same day of the 5-0 Galatasaray Super Cup. So I was kind of following that on my phone at the time. But no, and then actually, interestingly, I went over to closer to Fenerbahce. I went over to Karakoy and didn't know this at the time, that it was the day that they had I think it was a Champions League qualifier against Lugano. And so I started to see all the Fener fans coming out of the woodwork to go. This is probably at 11 in the morning, but started to see those jerseys popping up, and thankfully I was 2 days strong into my fandom at that point, so I wasn't going to be swayed by all these Fenerbahce people. But yeah, happened to be over there the day of a Champions League qualifier for Fener.
So it was really in Istanbul where you already decided from, okay, I'm a Beşiktaş fan now. It's just a decision you made like that. Did you do like the research online already about the political affiliation of the fans and stuff, and you just thought, okay, that seems to stroke with my values, and that's a club I want to follow?
Yeah, I think exactly. I think that the day that I kind of became aware of the club, frankly, like I just started reading, and I do that. Like I think we all do at this point. Like I'm going to go online and read Wikipedia articles while I wait for dinner to cook or whatever. So I'd done the reading, some of the reading, and kind of realized, okay, yeah, I think this is my club. And I don't know at the time if I knew it was going to stick or not. It was like, okay, like I'm in Turkey right now. I'm gonna gonna follow this thing and see where it goes. And yeah, here we are.
And obviously, you've made friends in the community since then, but you've also mentioned that you've actually met people in real life that support Beşiktaş nowadays, and you even, I believe, have a restaurateur that you frequent at his place, and he's a Beşiktaş fan, I believe. And how did that come about? How did you meet people? I think even one of the people that's in our group chat now found your house, right? In a very special way. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, Denver is it's a big city. It's 800,000 people. Metro area is probably 2.5, 3 million people. So it's a decent sized community, although I wouldn't say that we have like a ton of Turkish presence here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think definitely since I just started wearing gear out and about and got a flag and hung it outside my house, it's opened some pretty cool connections and conversations, even just here in Denver. So a couple of examples, like often if I'm out and about, sometimes somebody will just come up to me and be like, where'd you get that shirt? That's a team from my country kind of thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I don't know if they think I found it at a thrift store or something, but they're always very surprised to see the shirt. Yeah, there's a Turkish restaurant pretty close to my house that we go to occasionally. I'm vegetarian, so sometimes my options are a little bit limited. But he has some like the badge hanging up on the wall at the restaurant, and so we started talking about it from that perspective. I think he grew up in Ankara, I want to say, and he was telling me that he and his brothers would hop on the train and go to Istanbul for matches when he was a kid. So lifelong connection to the club for him. And then Fatih, shout out to Fatih, who's in our group. He was going for a run. He lives literally like 4 or 5 blocks from me. Was going for a run and saw the flag outside the house and was like, that's interesting. And so I think eventually we crossed paths just kind of on the street, and I think he was probably expecting a Turkish person to walk out of my house. So sorry to disappoint, but
yeah, you have the beard, but it's not like the real Turkish mustache or anything like that.
No. That's aspirational, but yeah. So and so we connected. We kind of started texting about the big news, and actually the Beşiktaş here game. We got together. He invited me over to his house, and we watched that one together. So and we're trying to maybe do that for the Fener Derby coming up as well. So yeah, it's been cool. It's the kind of thing like, I don't think if somebody saw me wearing an Arsenal kit or Man U,
Mm-hmm.
I mean people might stop me and, oh yeah, cool, but I don't think it would open conversations in the same way. I think Kaan at one point said like Beşiktaş is kind of a hipster fandom. And I think especially here in the States, people are like, the Turkish league, why the Turkish league? Why would you follow that instead of
Mm-hmm.
EPL or Bundesliga or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, 90.
So I think it's opened some.
Yeah, 95% of the time it's going to be a Turk, right, who speaks to you and it's like, hey, where'd you get that shirt or something like that, along those lines, like you said. And how often has it started conversation for you? Is that something that happens on the regular, or is it something that's from time to time?
More often than you would think.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm out in public at a baseball game or at a concert or something like that. People will. It's probably happened 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
In the less than 18 months, right? So it's fairly common. I think too, like even people who don't follow the team or really know anything about it, or even follow the Super League, sometimes they want to just let me know that they know
Mm-hmm.
that, like, oh, I recognize that club, so even if they're a fan of a different team or something, it's kind of like a street cred thing for people to say, oh, I know what that jersey is.
Yeah, for sure. And do you sometimes get to like, oh, that's cool, I support Galatasaray, but yeah, something like that? You definitely have had that reaction. You know.
Yep, exactly. I think one of the other guys who works at the restaurant, you know, the owner's the Beşiktaş fan, but I think one of the other guys who works there is a Gala guy.
Of course,
I've definitely met some Fenner fans in the wild as well.
Yeah.
So I think Fatih is the only one who I think would be an actual Beşiktaş fan as well. But definitely have talked to some other Turks.
Yeah. And
on the community.
And how difficult is it for a fan like you who knows very limited Turkish, I imagine, to find information and to stay in touch? And because I mean, I think most people I think there's a lot of people like you in the sense that, oh, they go to Turkey, they go to Istanbul, they're like, oh, that's a cool club, that's my Turkish club from now on. But then, you know, they leave, they go back home, they go back to England or whatever, and they're like, yeah, maybe they'll follow the results a little bit. But you're really in the thick of things. You're following it like religiously to the extent that I don't think I've ever seen that before from a foreigner who, you know, like for you, it was really just, okay, I went to Turkey, like this club, and now you're like a fanatic almost. And I think for most people, that becomes like a casual thing. It's like, you know, I support my first club, and now Beşiktaş, whenever they play in Europe or something against a team that I don't like, I'll support them or something like that. But like you're really, you've gone all in, so to speak.
All in. Yeah. Well, you know, I think it probably helped, honestly, that I didn't have a club, you know, previously. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like I was going to have a second club. You know, it was the kind of thing that, like, I was vaguely for a number of years looking for a football club to support, and, you know, finally found it. And clearly, like, from my baseball fandom my whole life, have the capacity to, like, really go all in on things. And so, yeah, you know, I think at first it was sort of weird and lonely, you know. I mean, like, I would watch the matches, and, you know, I didn't have Twitter at the time. I quit for political reasons.
Understandable. Course, but, I'm still on it, but it's really only to advertise the podcast, and, like, you know, if I catch myself being on there too much, then you're just getting worked up about, you know, political issues, and it's become a political cesspool. Before, I used to be in this football bubble, and for the longest time, even after Elon bought the platform, I was able to stay within that bubble. But then I think I reacted I interacted with a couple of tweets that were like about the whole conflict in Gaza, and ever since then it's like the floodgates open, and now I just get, you know, far right vitriol, propaganda, all that kind of stuff, and it's like, oh my god, you know, it's I understand why people leave the platform, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I like that the algorithm. I have no interest in, you know, and I'm pretty firm in my convictions, as I'm sure you are as well. But it's also like, it does something to your brain to be exposed to that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. It makes you look at the world like, is everyone like this? Is everyone a piece of shit racist? Is everyone like, I mean, that's how you start thinking, because it's obviously, it's like a little, it's a vacuum. But if you see like 3 or 4 people who have like those types of reactions, and you're like, oh my god, the entire world's going crazy, even though it's only a couple idiots, you know. But yeah, it's so tough not to get caught up into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think that's where, I mean, Twitter, X, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Sorry, my language is you know, for better or worse, like you said, if you're a sports fan, I think that's kind of still the place where the discussion happens,
and not
right?
so much the discussion, but like the information, the news, that's important. Like, I mean, that's also one of the main reasons that I'm still on Twitter. It's just, I mean, other than professional reasons, because it's where people are able to find you easily, but also just, yeah, it's I think especially when it comes to Turkish football, something that isn't covered that well internationally, and I definitely think Turkish football lives on Twitter almost. It's almost impossible to find information otherwise if you're not on Twitter, because unfortunately, what's the other platform called? The Blue Sky? Yeah, that hasn't really picked up in Turkey yet. So yeah, you really have to stick to Twitter for those reasons. But yeah.
Interestingly, there was a period, I don't know, I think it was probably earlier this year, that there were rumors that they were going to ban Twitter in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
I think when the protests were kind of popping off again, and so there was this massive influx of Turks to Blue Sky.
Okay.
But it was very short lived.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of followers on Blue Sky. I think because I followed what limited Beşiktaş accounts there were. I had this influx of Turkish followers for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it seems to have died down again. And I don't really post. I'm more of a consumer anyway. But
a lurker, like on the forums back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. So I would go on Reddit, which in retrospect that must be where I found the podcast. Like I don't actually remember, but I know that we'll post the links on Reddit, and so I would go through and translate things, and then sometimes there'd be posts in English on Reddit, and then I must have seen one of your posts advertising the podcast. I was like, oh my god, like actual English language content that I can follow and engage with. And so I don't know what it would be like today. If I had not found the community, like my fandom might have gone the other direction. It's hard to say, right? But I think the fact that I fairly early on, like I said, I probably found the podcast around November and joined the WhatsApp group shortly thereafter. So I think that definitely helped like solidify. I think at that point I was like watching the matches, and then I would go on Reddit. I think I haven't played FIFA ever really before, but I bought that last year's version so I could like get to know the players, and it's one way to figure out.
How do you enjoy that? Because supposedly this year's version is really good, and it has the stadium in it and stuff. So it might be worth it. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't had much time to play video games recently, but
I mean, I can imagine you follow Beşiktaş. You follow a baseball team. You probably follow a basketball team. Do you not? Are you not into basketball? Okay.
No basketball, no American football. Okay. I used to be an NFL fan, but I just kind of wandered away from it. Hockey? It was like, hockey. No, like I'll enjoy any sport. If it's on and I'm bored, I'll turn it on. Yeah. But not a fan in the traditional way. So really, baseball. And for the longest time after I gave up on the NFL, it was like baseball, and then 5 months off from caring about sports, and then back to baseball. And so the timing of the Turkish league is also pretty nice for me, because it covers that entire time between baseball season being on. So yeah.
And how is it to watch the games? Because I mean, for us to schedule this recording, it was not difficult, I want to say, but there's an 8-hour time difference there. How is that for you? Because usually the games will be like really early in the morning then, I suppose. So is that a problem for you? Especially on weekdays, I guess on Friday or on Monday, that's not the easiest thing to make work. It's not as bad as those of us who live in Australia. I know we got a couple of people who live in Australia, and they really complained about the timing of the matches. And I think Eren, who's originally from Australia but now is in Thailand, he's been saying, yesterday was like the first game that was like at a decent time for him. Is that a problem for you in Colorado?
Not usually. I mean, so like yesterday's match, as awful as it was, it was at 8 a.m. my time. So it was like wake up, make a cup of coffee, and watch the match. So most of the games so far this season have been more like between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., which is great. I mean, it's fine. Not that we're in Europe, but last year it was a little bit of a challenge. Those Thursday games would be in the middle of my work day. Of course, I work a pretty standard kind of 9 to 5 sort of deal. So, I would, if I could, have it on my phone on my desk next to my screen while I did work. But those ones were a little bit tough. And I think there was like one match last year. I don't remember which one, but it was really early, like 6 a.m. or something like that. But no, I would say in general it's been fine. It's unfortunately, I don't want to drink a beer at 10 in the morning usually. So there's that part that's not as good. But you know, not opposed to it.
Well,
Either,
if it was a bad game, you can have a couple after maybe, or if it's a good game as well to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday being a particularly bad game. What sucks when it's at 8 a.m. is that then you have the rest of your day to just kind of be in
to maul
be
it
in the mood
over
of
and
yeah. You know, whereas I think for you, it's like that sucked. I'm going to go to sleep in 2 hours and move on with my life. So
yeah, I mean, I try to. I just said this in the group as well earlier. I try to have like other hobbies that have nothing to do with football and like just completely enable myself to switch off and just not worry too much about it. And of course, the podcast gives me like a platform to vent in, so I try to keep it all, as pure as possible. I don't go spewing too much into the groups yet. I want to keep that vitriol for live on on YouTube.
Yeah. And similarly, like I have other things to occupy me, so I try not to stew. But yesterday was kind of a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. Yesterday, I mean, I think I titled the episode, and it's going to date a little bit when we're recording this, but this is after the Gestaberli game, and I titled it, to the meme from San Andreas, GTA San Andreas. Oh shit, here we go again, and it just really feels like that because I kind of felt like going into the international break. Okay, you know what? We got a draw against Galatasaray away. We should have won that game, but that's not a bad point to get. And then we can go now. We have a relatively easy schedule. And it kind of feels like last season under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was like, okay, we got the tough games out of the way. Now we're going into November. It's going to be easy. And then we go on this horrible run of form. It completely ruins our season, essentially. Let me just, for a second, pause my robot vacuum here because it decided to enter my office. Don't know why it's doing that. Should be finished already, but let's see.
It's working overtime today.
Yeah, it really is. All right, I paused that. Sorry about that. So I mean,
no worries.
It's still doing stuff. Go away. Oh my god. Hello. Dear God. All right. Sorry about that, Nathan. So you mentioned that you will go out, wear a shirt, and people will recognize it. So obviously you've been only a fan for a relatively short amount of time, but is that something you've dabbled in already in shirt collecting? How many shirts do you own, and which is your favorite?
That's a good question. Let's see. I guess I have 5. So I have all 3 of the current season kits, and then I have the 2 of last season. So I wasn't able to get the home whites. That one sold out, but I have the other 2 main ones from last year. And then I have a hat. I have a hoodie, 2 hoodies, I think. So I've got a little collection building, but haven't gone back into like the vintage, old school stuff.
There's a long back catalog if you want to get into that.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Although nowadays getting anything into the United States from anywhere else is challenging suddenly. Yeah. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But favorite of the ones I have, I don't know. It's probably this one. Last year's black. I thought was
it's a fantastic
pretty classy.
I love it. Yeah, especially I mean, you with the baseball background, you probably really appreciate the pinstripes.
I do, although that's most often associated with the Yankees, who are kind of the the great Satan of baseball world. But yeah, I do like a pinstripe.
Yeah, me too. I love that shirt. I think I said last season. That's one of my all-time favorites, and I haven't really changed my mind on that. Sometimes you say that it's like, okay, I really like this shirt, and it's kind of like the recency bias. But just looking at it right now, I think it's an absolutely gorgeous shirt. I think it's a shame that it's going to be associated with a season that was, yet again not the greatest, but
Yeah, I think the first one I bought was actually the stripe one. because I felt like that's more classic according to what I thought of being classic in my 2 months of knowledge at the time. But but I do think the black one is better.
So what have we learned since then, Nathan? What is classic when it comes to Beşiktaş? Do you know?
I mean, I don't know if you put it into words, but I think like the black and the white, just from like an aesthetic perspective, I mean, called the black and white. Right? I mean, so like,
but like a lot of people, like young fans, and you see this a lot, like in Turkey as well. They're like, "Oh, why don't we have a çubuklu this season?" Which is, of course, the striped shirt. And it's like that's Beşiktaş. It's the traditional Beşiktaş, but actually, the traditional Beşiktaş outfit is what we wore yesterday. It's white shirt, black trunks, white socks, and sometimes black socks. That depends. That varies, but it's always white shirt, black trunks. That's the traditional look for Beşiktaş, but we don't really stick to it enough, I would say, and it's a point of irritation for a lot of big shirt enthusiasts who are like, we don't wear that combination enough, and we should wear it more. Although I'm a big shirt enthusiast, and I am really partial to black shirts. I love black shirts. Like, I think a lot of my all-time favorites are black shirts, and I don't know. I just really think all black looks super, super classy. Are you excited about the new gray shirt that's coming out, by the way?
I don't know. I only saw the mock-up that was posted in the WhatsApp community. I didn't love it on first glance, but I'll take a look, another look. So it looked kind of like a training kit to me. I don't know.
I liked it, but I need to see it in person first, because I feel like if it's dark enough, like then it borders on being a black shirt. I like that. So we'll have to wait and see a little bit. It's kind of like the same design as last season's white shirt, I believe, in terms of design elements. But you mentioned that it's difficult to get stuff into the US nowadays, of course, with the tariffs and all that kind of stuff. Has it already impacted being able to import a jersey then? Or, I mean, I know, for example, like Kartal Yuvası EU, they ship from Belgium. And I was looking into shipping some stuff to the US recently, and they have temporarily suspended shipping to the US since like last month or something, I want to say. But you were still able to get the shirts earlier in the season, though, without a problem, right? Or did you have to pay extra?
Yeah. No, the tariffs, our dear leader has, he announced them and then kicked them down the road, and then they were tied up and weren't implemented for a while. And so all three of this year's jerseys I was able to get into the country before they went into effect. So I haven't honestly tried to order anything since then, but I know a lot of the shipping companies, even if you're wanted to pay, they're trying to figure out all the logistics of trying to manage that new process. Like you said, I think a lot of them just sort of have temporarily at least thrown up a pause. So I haven't tried since then. There's some court stuff coming up here that may throw the tariffs out. We'll see. But I think the big thing too is that even if there were tariffs before, you had this like de minimis exception where anything that was valued, I think, under $800 wasn't subject to any of that. And they took that away entirely. So even if you're bringing in a $100 shirt, it's now subject to that same tariff. So it's not. I mean, I think it's like 15% or something from the EU. So it's not like it's a backbreaker.
That's not too bad though, because I think that if I'm not mistaken, the Kartal Yuvası has taken off the requirements for you to pay VAT on your orders, so you're paying 21% less. So still, you're still getting the shirt 6% cheaper if you think about it, even if you have to pay the 15% tariff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice the VAT comes off the top, which is a nice little discount. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I wish they did the same thing with stuff from when I order stuff from the US, but that doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Okay, well, you mentioned earlier as well, Nathan, you do have a bucket list to go and watch a game. Is that something that you're already planning, or is that something you're kicking down the road still, and you're gonna wait and see a little bit?
I don't have any concrete plans, but I'd like to do it sooner than later. I actually might be going back to Uganda next summer, which we'll see. And so there's actually, I think part of the reason that this all happened in the first place is that there was there's a relatively new direct flight from Denver to Istanbul on Turkish.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes kind of the gateway to much of the world from Denver for that reason. So if I go and if the timing works out, I would like to spend some time in Istanbul again. And so yeah, if they're home, then certainly I'll make it happen. But I'd like to do it in the next few years. But we'll see. It's never easy. I have 3 dogs, so
yeah, I did hear them earlier. I have a dog as well, and it makes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's, you have to find doggy sitters when you go on vacation.
Right, and I would like to bring my wife with me on that trip. She wasn't able to go on the first one,
yeah.
so and my parents live close by, but 3 dogs is a lot of dogs to ask somebody to watch. So
What kind of dogs do you have?
Just mutts. So 2 of them were we call res dogs, which means like we have the Native American reservation.
Oh, okay.
We have like Native American reservations out here in the western part of the United States, and there's a big kind of stray dog problem.
And are they big dogs or smaller dogs then?
They're all about 50 pounds, which is at about 25 kilos.
22, 23 kilos maybe, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I have 2 that are res dogs, and then I have 1 actually that I met while kicking around Guatemala and brought her up from. She was a street dog in Guatemala, so I brought her up from Central America.
That's cool. So you're a bit of a globetrotter then. I mean, been to Guatemala, Uganda, obviously Istanbul. You love traveling. I get the sense.
I do. For a while, like the Uganda connection, I for about 3 years worked. I was based here in Denver, but did a lot of work in that part of the world. So would go there fairly frequently, and so was going back for a wedding of a colleague that I knew from there. But I think that's honestly part of the reason that it was more appealing to me to have like a Turkish club than it would be to have an English club, because I feel like I can learn more about a culture that I have less contact with, via the Turkish perspective than I can by following the EPL or something like that. So yeah, I try to get around. I saw CONCACAF Champions League match at Estadio Azteca.
Oh, cool!
Wow. Club America, Club America versus I think it was Saprissa from Costa Rica, I believe. So that was a pretty cool experience. 100,000 people or something like that in that stadium. But,
that's one of those things that's on the bucket list of a lot of football fans in general. People, especially those that love to travel around and go and see stadiums. Like the Azteca is like near the top of everyone's list, I want to say. So that's cool.
It was wild. I guess in retrospect, I could have become a Club America fan at that point. And it would have been probably easier. From like I speak okay Spanish at this point. I use it for work, so it would have helped me practice my Spanish by watching those matches in Spanish. But here we are.
Well, no backseats, Nathan. You're in now, and you're never getting out again. So
no. I'm very happy with where I am.
What about your wife? Does she show any interest in sports in general, or in Beşiktaş in football? Will she watch the games with you? Or is that not something she does?
She's not really into the sports thing. I think I've heard Sinan say something similar to this, where like I feel like sports. I try not to be very like nationalistic, tribalistic. Yeah. In other parts of my life, and so I think I try to confine that to sports. I think she has a hard time getting into that sort of thing, even from that perspective. So no, she tolerates it. and when I get excited about something, she'll listen at the very least. But
well, if you're going to
not...
travel together to Uganda next time, and you do decide to stay a couple of days in Istanbul, definitely take her to the game, because even if she doesn't like football, I think she'll love the atmosphere, and that's something that I get the feedback from a lot of people, that the atmosphere in the stadium is just something that leaves a very lasting impression. My girlfriend as well, she's into football a little bit more than yours, I guess, but like when I took her to the old Inonu Stadium, she was really like genuinely impressed and loved the experience. So definitely something worth doing with the two of you. Maybe
sure.
you can get Fatih to tag along as well.
Hey, that'd be great. I should also say, I think behind me at one point you can see it, that scarf, the Beşiktaş scarf back there. Fatih's parents visited him from Turkey, and I think he must have told them that he met this random white dude who liked Beşiktaş, and so they were nice enough to bring me that scarf. So he dropped that off at my house. So just a really cool experience.
That's the Turkish hospitality for you. As soon as they learn that you like something that has to do with our culture, then prepare to receive some gifts.
Yeah, super cool.
Well, Nathan, thank you very much for telling us your story. And of course, it's how do you guys say it in English? It's a burgeoning. Is that the right way to say it? Like it's still something that's blossoming. It's like a young flower who's blossoming, and hopefully it will keep blossoming for many years to come. That just sounds weird. That almost sounds okay, but
yeah, it works. I would say it's blossomed, because I spend a lot of time, but
you do, yeah.
It'll only get deeper, richer, like a fine wine.
Yeah,
from here.
I hope so, and I'm so happy that the Black Eagles podcast can play a small part in your fandom and help you to just get more and more stuck into things. And I'm glad to have you on the show, Nathan. It's been a pleasure. And of course, if you guys are interested in anything like this, if you want to tell your story on the Black Eagles podcast, let me know. Drop a comment in the comments, and of course, join the WhatsApp community, and then you can come and interact with myself and Nathan, and you can come share your stories if you want. If you don't want to be on camera, just come and tell us like that. So Nathan, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it, and we'll speak after the games and during the week and all that kind of stuff on the WhatsApp community. Thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Take care, Kaan.